Well, hey there, you guys. Welcome back to another episode of the show. I'm your host, Janine Alley, and you're listening to Becoming the CEO of Your Life Today. And today we are talking about aligning expectations on the show. Not only aligning our own expectations, which I talk about a lot, but also being aware of the expectations that other people have for us and asking the hard questions to know whether or not we want to fulfill on those expectations. I've been talking quite a bit on the podcast about closing the alignment gap. So we're talking about alignment. We're talking about the things that you actually want to have happen in your life versus the things that are actually happening in your life and closing that gap. So the greater the gap, I think, the more dissatisfaction that we have in our lives, the more friction that we feel, the more unhappy we are, to be honest. But the more we can close that gap, the more excitement we feel, the more in flow we feel, the more we feel like we're working on things that are meaningful and fulfilling to us because they're aligned, right? We feel abundant, we feel lit up about the work that we're doing in the world and the things that we're doing, not just in our work, but of course outside of our work, the way that we raise our kids, the exercise that we choose to do, the food that we choose to eat, all of these things can be either in or out of alignment. And so the more we work to close that gap, the more we feel fulfilled and amazing, which is what we want, right? So just like a lot of the podcast episodes, this podcast was born in my brain because of a coaching call that I had with someone. And she was feeling like the only time she was able to really be creative and to feel free was when she was writing. And she had a very limited writing practice compared to all the time that she spent doing other things in her life. And I thought this was really interesting, that this was the only time that she felt really creative and free. Those are the words that she used. And so I wanted to talk to her further about this. So I started asking her questions, and she said she felt like the other areas of her life, she's trying to meet other people's expectations of her, and she didn't feel free. And I thought that was really fascinating. I could probably go on and on about that for a minute, but I want you to be aware of what's going on for you in your life. If you're not feeling free with your time or your energy or your life, what are you feeling instead? Because the truth is, I mentioned this a lot on the podcast, you don't have to do anything, right? The things that we are doing are things that we choose to do. But when we talk to ourselves like that, I have to get this done, that just doesn't feel very good. It feels like we're caged, even in our own lives and with our own choices. We might feel stressed, of course. I know I feel scarce, like my time is scarce, my energy is scarce, and I'm trying to protect it. And that doesn't feel good to me. So if we're trying to meet other people's expectations and they're not ours, this is furthering that alignment gap. And the bigger the gap, like I just said, the more dissatisfaction that we are going to have with our life. No matter how many amazing books you write or how many clients you serve or how big your business gets, something is always going to feel off because there is such a large gap between what you want and what is actually happening. You're constantly living in these two worlds of what you want to do and what other people want you to do. And I'm not saying, do not hear me wrong on this, because I'm not saying that what other people want, what your loved ones want from you, can't be what you want too. This is also an option, but it comes down to the way that you're thinking about things. And we can only do so much thought work in our lives, right? I have to do a lot of thought work around things that I know are necessary for me to, for example, grow my business, but I don't want to be doing thought work around other people's expectations of me. I feel like there needs to be a conversation or something happening there so that I am not fulfilling expectations that I don't want to fulfill outside of the decisions I'm making right here. Okay, so let me give you an example of this. And this is through secret contracts. I don't think I've brought this up before on the podcast, but we all have secret contracts. So what this means is secret contracts are the roles that you have slid into through habit or through complacency, not necessarily by design or with intention, right? So for example, in my house, my husband, Merrill, breaks down the recycling boxes every time there is a recycling pickup. Every other week, he goes up to the garage and he breaks down all of the boxes that we have out there and takes them out to the curb. This is not something I've asked him to do. This is just something he does. What I do in our family, that is a secret contract that's never been discussed, is I make dinner. We have never discussed this. It just happens. And it just so happens that these particular contracts work out brilliantly. At least they do for me. Anyway, I don't know if my husband enjoys breaking down the boxes, although I've offered many times to give him a hand or to do it. And he's like, no, it's okay. I got it. So that works out. But other times, these kinds of secret contracts or these expectations that we have can lead to resentment. These are not limited to life partners. We can have secret contracts with our children. We can have secret contracts with friends and siblings and coworkers. They can be in all different relationships that we have, although I would say they're probably more likely to show up in long-term friendships and relationships than short-term ones. But we kind of have this idea of this is just the way things are. And because we think about this way, we don't ever question these things. However, if you don't fulfill on your secret contract, let's say you become aware of a secret contract and you don't fulfill, this is where things start to get kind of muddy, right? Because we end up rocking the boat and people are like, hey, wait, I thought you were going to do that because you've always done it, right? So what are some of the expectations that other people have for you? And secret contracts is just an example. But I want you thinking specifically about expectations that you don't want to fulfill. Or maybe you do want to fulfill them, but you're thinking about them in that I have to get this done kind of mentality, right? Maybe people in your house think that you are the fixer of emotions, right? You're the great fixer of emotions. And as moms, I think we have a tendency to do this, right? We're raised to think culturally that life is only good when everyone's feeling good. And this just isn't true because this isn't life, right? If you believe this, you have a tendency maybe to swoop in, make everybody's favorite dish, right? Crack the jokes, smooth things over, and huzzah. It's like magic happens and people are feeling good. Therefore, life is good. We're back to that neutral state, right? I think one of the reasons we feel guilty sometimes is because other people have these expectations that we will be available to do this for them. Our job is not to be the emotional regulators of other people. Our job might be to teach other people how to do this for themselves. I spend a lot of time actually talking to my kids about emotions, as you can probably imagine. But my job in my mind is to manage my own emotions. I was actually just talking to my oldest, Thomas, who is currently doing a summer job as an engineer intern in Southern California. And my big question was to him was, are you going to be at the family reunion in Oregon? And he, all last semester was like, Mom, I don't know, because I don't know how this is going to be. I don't know how flexible that they're going to be with my schedule. And so we were having this conversation. And he was like, well, what do you think I should do? And I'm like, oh no, this is not my decision to make for you. And I told him, you need to choose. And he was kind of hesitating, I could tell, because he wasn't sure how I was going to respond if he decided to stay in California. And the truth is I might be sad. I probably will be because I love to see my kids, right? But my feelings are not my son's responsibility to manage, right? He just needs to do what's best for him. So I was telling him, listen, if making money for you is the priority, then stay and make money. If being with the family is more of a priority for you than that, then be with the family. And I wasn't saying that to be guilty, or like to try and guilt trip him about this. I was being very objective. I was saying, you need to look at this from this lens. This is where the alignment is key. You have to ask yourself, okay, what do you want? And then what do you really want? That is so important because I think when we're asking ourselves that surface question, what do you want? There's a lot of shoulds that show up in that. Well, I should spend time with family. But if he's going to be stressed about his finances over the semester or over the next year because he didn't take that time to make the money while he could, I don't want that for him. And I don't think that he would want that for his life either. So this makes this decision much easier to make when we get really clear on what it is that we want. I told him, you don't need to worry about me. You don't ever need to worry about me and my emotional state. I've totally got this. You don't need to worry about that. So hopefully that helped him to make that decision. He ended up deciding to come with us. But I mean, it's neither here nor there. It wouldn't have mattered to me in the long run. I just wanted him to make that decision and have him own that instead of feeling like, well, I should, based off of the expectations he thought I had for his life, right? So we want to work to really close this alignment gap. What does that mean? So again, what you want and what you're doing needs to match more and more and more as time goes on. And this really is a dance because life shifts, you change your mind, circumstances change, right? All of these things. And this really takes a lot of connection to who you are and understanding that, listen, the decision that I would make in this situation isn't right or wrong. It's just the decision that I feel is the right one for me because I am connected to who I am. And this is what I was trying to teach my son. You have to be clear on what your expectations are for your life. And again, the best way to get to the bottom of this is asking yourself, what do I really want? What are my priorities? What do I want my life to look like? And we manage and we juggle so many different roles in our life, right? As moms and wives, maybe as caretakers, as sisters, as friends, like all of these things kind of play into the decisions that we are making today. So just because you would make a decision today doesn't mean it's the right decision even 5 months from now, right? Or next week, even because you might not have all the information that you're going to have next week. So how are you currently fulfilling these roles that are different from how you want to be fulfilling these roles? This is a question that we should ask ourselves on a regular basis in order to help us to close that alignment gap. I think sometimes we feel like, okay, if I break the mold, I'm going to rock the boat and people are going to be disappointed or upset. And I want to ask you, how is that a problem? Our emotional experience is not anything that needs to be fixed ever. And it's the same with someone else's emotional experience. Of course, sometimes we need to learn how to communicate better, right? Sometimes we need to learn how to act differently, right? We might be acting in a way that could harm other people. We don't want that at all, right? But we can't just drive crazy or fly off the handle because of our emotions, right? There are consequences for that. But we feel things we don't want to feel, and often we want to flee the scene, right? Not necessarily physically, but we want to drink, we want to yell, we want to drug, we want to eat, we want to Netflix or social media or whatever it is. We feel out of control physically, and we're trying so hard not to feel things, right? The secret to success in anything, I think, is learning how to be so good at feeling emotions. And it's interesting because we know this cognitively. I mean, I have been coaching some of my clients for years, and I know that they know this. I know that they've heard me talk about this. I know that we've worked on this before. But when we're in the moment, we're feeling this emotion that's really, really challenging for us to feel, it's hard. And if we feel like we're going to disappoint somebody or we feel guilty about that, sometimes not meeting that expectation of somebody else, those emotions are going to drive the bus, right? So the way that we do this, the way that we practice feeling emotions and allowing other people to practice feeling their emotions is we do it first. We have to learn how to hold space for ourselves. If we learn how to love ourselves all the time, no matter what it is that we're feeling, it's so much easier for us to hold space and to love other people exactly where they're at, even if they're feeling disappointed in us, and even if we're feeling guilty about that. So one of the things I tell my restorative and yin yoga students all of the time, this is what we focus on in class, is the world would be a different place if everyone could practice feeling emotions. If everyone had a space like yoga, doesn't have to be yoga, but some modality to practice feeling emotions in safe spaces so that they knew how to do this in real life. Their emotions don't move them into that fight or flight space where we are subconsciously reacting. We're subconsciously saying yes to something that we know is not a good fit for us. So as a reminder, we raise the floor by closing that alignment gap. And one of the ways that we do this is by analyzing the expectations that not only we have for our lives, but the expectations that we feel other people have for us. And again, this requires a conversation because most of the time we're just assuming. We're just assuming that if we don't meet that expectation, everything's going to fall apart and they're going to fall apart, right? Like secret contracts, right? But some of these are verbal agreements and some of them are just other agreements that we have. I mean, there's just many, many ways that we feel like we have a handle on what other people expect out of us when we may or may not know that to be true. So in order to do this, we have to be clear on what we're aligning with. Right? What are the expectations that you have for your life? Do you think these match other people's expectations of you? And what are the obstacles that you're going to run into in order to close that alignment gap, to make that shift? And what do you actually want to do? These are all really, really important questions to ask and to think about. If you are interested in learning more about this, I have an amazing masterclass for you that is free. It's on my website and it is available to you right now. All you need to do is go to JanineAlley.com/webinar to find out more about closing the alignment gap and to be connected to yourself and all the things that I talk about on the podcast. It is by far the best training I have ever done for free. So if you are interested in that, go to JanineAlley.com/webinar to get instant access to the masterclass that is live for you right now. All right, you guys, if you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, please rate, review, and share with a friend. It would mean the world to me. All right, you guys, have a beautiful rest of your week, and we will talk to you guys soon. We'll see ya. Take care. Bye-bye.